Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
And we welcome you to this edition of Night Shift Special Edition. Eric Lopez here. This is historic here, folks. My boy Drew Gluchov, per usual, on and Kyle Nash. This the first time the three of us have been on a show together. Has to be big.
Yeah, man.
Just that alone. But we're on, baby. Why are we on
today?
Anything happened today? Why are we on? Oh, that's right.
Because Ohio State lost to Michigan.
No, Oklahoma in Addition Financial Arena, the Big 12 team for the first time, right, fellas?
We will talk a little UCF Oklahoma basketball, but we will talk about the story everybody's talking about. Dillon Gabriel announcing on Instagram, because why wouldn't you announce it on Instagram? That's the thing to do now. Announcing he's transferring from UCF. He's entered his name into the portal. Announcing it on Saturday, literally during the Oklahoma UCF game. We'll get Kyle's thoughts. He was at the men's basketball game as that unfolded. But Drew, I'm going to start with you on this because we've been talking about this on the podcast. We've kind of teased it. Hey, we don't know if he's coming back in general to the school. We wondered, a lot of speculation. You were on our time on the episode where they showed Dillon Gabriel and saying that he got cleared. And now here we are, Dillon Gabriel no longer a UCF Knight. Your thoughts?
Well, if you recall in all of our conversation, I took a pretty hard line with, is he coming back? And my line was, until he's back, taking a snap behind center, he's not back. And, it could have been a week. It could be never. Until you're back, you're not back. And, well, the never part came true. And I did get some flack for some people online for being a little pessimistic about it. But the truth is, he's moving on to other ventures.
Kyle, you were at the basketball game when this kind of came out. What was your reaction?
Yeah, when I first saw it, from us talking amongst ourselves about the same thing and Drew taking that hardline soft stance that I gave him a hard time for it being such a soft hardline stance. I'm still at this point too. I'm sure we'll talk about it later, but I wasn't necessarily sure the transfer was coming. If he considered it, sure, but I'm not gonna knock a guy for exploring his options and mobility and all that. I'm a pro transfer portal guy with the rules that there are and all this other stuff, but I didn't think it was going to happen. Certainly not this bleeding early, without any sort of motive of why he would leave. But let's just say, I'm not exactly sure this was the best PR for him to do it this early, A, and B, doing nothing else to really kind of control the narrative for the team and speaking as to, they'll be okay without me, that kind of thing. When I read the message, it's kind of a see you bye. I mean, the aloha at the end was forced and just listen, if he's got a PR guy, he needs a new one. This was not a great look from my perspective.
Well, I mean, part of it's the day,
Sure.
They always say, do your bad news on Friday. That's your news dump day. And they didn't do that. Whoever advised them on it, you pick the day right after your regular season ends. Granted, this is usually when you start seeing transfer names thrown out there. But I mean, I agree. You didn't even wait till the rest of the games on Saturday were done. I mean,
forget that. Here's my issue. All right, you can leave. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that. I'm not even going to say he made a bad move. I know some people are jumping to that conclusion. You can't say that until we know where he ends up and see what happens. So in fairness to him on that, that's fair. My issue is what you just picked up on, Drew, here. You make this announcement, 12 hours after your teammates just beat South Florida in an emotional game, right? A big game, in-state game. And you announce this right as your fellow student athletes, your basketball players are playing one of their biggest games against Oklahoma. And you can tell me, well, it's basketball. student athletes have a bond. They're aware of what's going on around them on campus. I think that's a slap in the face to the basketball players. I think it's a slap in the face to the football players. That's the issue I have with it.
No, that's a great call, and I'll see that and raise you this. What about all the cats who were out there at said USF game wearing their DG the brand socks? Like, what about that? Okay, this clearly
he got his money.
Yeah, exactly. He looks like Charlie Sheen here, dude. I already got your money. Okay. I mean, I've already seen some people out on Twitter talking about burning socks. I mean, hey, someone's going to do it.
Well, right? but you bring this up.
Hey, being from Cleveland, I was there. I remember when LeBron jerseys were being burnt. Granted, I was not one of them, but still, I could. There's people online posting, what do I do with my jersey? And, I've always said, because you collect pro and people leave, the transfer portal is the college version of free agency. Correct. And the answer to the question of what do I do with this is you wear it for the front, not for the back.
Or you can sell it. Hell, I mean.
Well, you can turn around and sell it, but you're gonna take a loss on it. But the key is wear it for the front.
You will get it.
Yeah.
Well, I think
I don't buy Chinese knockoffs. I'm sorry.
But this is the thing. And I remember I argued this in July with Jeff. I know it's a shocker. Me and Jeff argued about something.
What?
God, you guys are like an old married couple.
Here we go.
But when this NIL thing came out, and I understand everything's great for it and what's good, positive about it. But I said, with this comes a lot of scrutiny. And we're seeing this with Dillon. What has Dillon been posting on Twitter for the last a number of weeks? It's all about the product. Has he tweeted about his teammates? No. And it's just hard. I think fans see through that. I mean, look, and I'm not endorsing.
Well, they're not stupid.
Right. And I'm not endorsing going after him and sure. there is a line. But I will defend the fan base that that I understand why they're ticked off. I don't think they're ticked off that he's leaving. I think they're ticked off the way he's leaving.
Agreed. 100%. I mean, I make the joke about the socks, but let's put it this way. Let's go through his IG recently, right? Him throwing passes. Hey, look, I'm totally better. And while I haven't seen the art time yet, because I'm going to binge it, because I don't want to be.
There's a star on that show is on this program right now.
His name's Eric Lopez. Yourself up. Yes, exactly. But I won't talk about who's come up to get your or Andrew's or you guys' autograph. This is so meta. I'm confused here. Anyways, but all that aside, it's him throwing passes before anything you may have seen on our time with people spoiling it for me on that episode. I'm joking. But anything you may have seen in our time on top of him just throwing passes, nothing about the teammates. And what's the other thing? Hey, I'm going to drop a care package at Sunglass Hut or wherever the hell it was. I mean, that it doesn't get more capitalist than that. And that doesn't really do well when you look at college football fans who are looking for loyalty. And we can have the conversation about coaches jumping ship and all that other stuff. But college fans look for loyalty, and the system is not built for it right now. To you guys' point about free agency, and I said the same thing on another show, Eric. So I'll definitely give you props for great minds thinking alike, bro.
True.
Here's the truth. It's the Wild West. When the part that drives me nuts is the mid-season inputs. I withdraw from the team, quit mid-season, and then go into the transfer portal. We saw it from Eric Gilliard, and while I wish him well. If he stayed just a smidgen longer, he'd be back on the field. So, I think there needs to, obviously this is a new era. It's still being tweaked, but I think there needs to be a period, a withdrawal transfer period, especially if you're giving, players the one-timer that they're planning on doing, where a player can transfer to a new school once without any penalty. So if you're going to do that, okay, well, you got to fulfill your obligation. You play your season. That's part of the scholarship obligation. If you're not on scholarship, if you're a walk-on, yeah, you can withdraw. That's fine. You're not under any contractual obligation that a scholarship would force you with the national letter of intent. So obviously something's got to give. Once the regular season's over, though, then all bets are off. Bowl games again. Exhibition games, we forget that unless you're playing for a national championship, they're just feel good events for the players and with a football game attached to it.
Well, and a lot of guys aren't going to play bowl games. They're going to skip it and things like that.
If they have pro aspirations,
right.
We saw it last year. A number of players, opted not to play, and it's expected. You don't expect them all to play for really at that point for just pride. You've got a career to worry about. We've seen bad injuries happen during bowl games. So from the timing of at least waiting until the season was over, okay, I don't fault Dillon for that. But I would have waited at least till Monday. I would have preferred Friday because that's where you dump the bad news. But at least till Monday, let the weekend end and let that all kind of just cool off. But there was smoke everywhere. I pointed out to Kyle because we were actually sitting next to each other at the game in the press box,
right?
That you had 3 captains on the field, and Dillon was not there. He was missing.
Correct.
And the guys were almost ready to walk to the field. He's nowhere to be found. Eventually, he shows up in his shorts and a top.
Right. I got a text messages from people that were at stadiums the last few weeks. They were saying there was hardly any interaction with him and the teammates and Mikey King. Remember how Mackenzie Milton would interact with him when he was on the field? And you see that a lot of times with quarterbacks, and you didn't see some of that. Is that a big deal? No big deal. But I was getting those messages. I'm with you, Drew. Look, I think that I was told people thought he'd be ready for SMU. I think a lot of guys.
He physically was. But I was very muted on it because I remember how long it took Jalen Robinson to come back. He practiced for over 2 weeks before he ever made it on the field. So when he was starting to practice again, okay, I don't expect it for SMU. UConn, if he was going to come back, it was going to be for the South Florida game, if at all. And by him not playing South Florida, I knew he was gone. That was.
You knew right there. You knew right there.
I knew right then and there he wasn't playing. He's done. He's not coming back because he's physically healthy. We knew that, and it was all mental. And part of it is the mental obstacle of getting over yourself. And I still deal with that today from my own injuries. Kyle and I were kind of reminiscing on our sports injuries. Growing up, that took a lot of rehab time. But it's real. We've seen it with Mackenzie Milton at Florida State. Not the same guy that used to play at UCF, and a lot of that is mental because there's always that risk of injury that goes in the back of your mind that what if I turn this way or what if this happens? My orthopedic surgeon told me if I wrestled again, I risk being crippled for life. I mean, that sits with you.
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that. But once he didn't dress, it was over. It was done. This is Mikey Keen's team now until something changes in 2022. Get used to that he's the future at this point. And you talk about Mackenzie Milton, you're talking very different personalities.
Yes.
Mackenzie is a future coach. He thinks like a coach. He talks like a coach. He worked with Dillon like a coach. He worked at Florida State as a player coach, basically.
Absolutely. He was supportive of Jordan Travis when a lot of people on the outside like, oh, why is he? He was very supportive. I think you make a great point on that.
Not just to Jordan Travis, gentlemen. We could take this back. I remember talking to him personally in 2018 when you could still get to him and he wasn't quite super famous yet. The way he supported DJ Mack, the way he supported Gabriel himself. This is not a one-time thing.
It's a team guy. It's a team guy. And fairly or not, I think Dillon's perception right now that he's not a team guy. Fair enough. Now that's the perception.
Yeah, it's perception. Now, perception, reality, not necessarily the same thing.
Correct. Agreed.
But part of that, again, bad timing. The ink on the newspaper is barely dry saying that the game was 17-13. So you waited, so little time before saying, peace out. It's going to create a lot of bad will. And that's not good for your brand. Obviously that's not good for where you're coming from. And I'm sure the teammates can't be happy.
Have you seen any teammates go out of their way and wish him well? I mean, maybe they have,
not yet.
but I haven't. They're not going to. It wasn't like the Milton one for sure.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Mackenzie Milton is a completely different person, different personality.
Right.
And he kind of transcended just the basic game. It's hard to find a guy whose character is that strong. Definitely, his story in itself is amazing. It rivals Alex Smith in the NFL for, the comeback, the adversity and all that stuff. Weaker personalities wouldn't survive that kind of comeback and make it onto the field. You're talking about a very unique personality that you don't replicate. And to compare Dillon to McKenzie isn't fair because you can't really replicate the personality and character that a McKenzie Milton has.
No, but in a way, though, he's following the legend, right? And that's
remember, it's the Ron Zook thing. It's the Ron Zook thing.
Yes.
You're the guy who follows the guy.
Yep.
Of all the examples you could come up with, you went with Ron Zook. Okay.
What's scary is him and I were thinking the same thing because it is the most obvious one. This is Night Shift, by the way. We want to because we got a lot of people tuning in and questions, so I do want to get to some of the comments.
Sure.
Make sure you subscribe. You're watching on Twitter, on Facebook, YouTube. Leave us some comments. Our own Bryson Turner's working the social media aspect of it. He has just told us that Matt Murschel has just posted an article on the Sentinel where he spoke to Dillon Gabriel's dad. Mm-hmm. You were aware of this, Kyle. Kind of clue us in because you were aware about this article that Murschel has written here when he spoke to Dillon's dad.
Yeah, I heard around the campfire because it's fortunate that UCF caught back up for some of the press guys because they were distracted by the Dillon Gabriel story during the first half of it. But talking around the campfire there, I had heard that Murschel had talked to Gabriel's dad, and it was something allegedly that he had been weighing throughout the year, but really didn't officially tell coach until the Saturday before the game, if I understood it correctly. So take that what you will. And this still kind of lays with me here, guys. You guys were kind of a bit more, lacking a better word, pessimistic than I was. You were sure he was out. I still don't have motive on why he thinks leaving is a better decision than staying.
Well, let's think about this offense is not designed for Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel is built for an air raid offense. He thrived in it. This doesn't support air raid at all. I mean, we've seen it. It's much more of a balanced attack. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up at an Ole Miss or even a TCU. Look at the work that Sonny Dykes did with Tanner Mordecai. That would be a very interesting landing spot. But he wants a place that's going to open up the passing game, chuck it downfield, because that's what Gabriel always did well. Even in his freshman year, his short to medium game was questionable, fair, but he had this amazing touch on a deep pass that you don't see very often for freshmen coming in. He was fantastic. So he's going to look for a program that's going to willing to air it out a lot.
Here's what I don't buy, though. The problem wasn't so much the scheme, is that the receiver core is not the depth that you had. Marlon Williams, Gabe Davis, Derek Snelson, guys like that aren't walking back through that door. Now, that doesn't tell me that was a coaching issue. That tells me he's looking for somebody who can get separation. And while Ryan O'Keefe can do that at times, he has had drops. Jalen Robinson has not been the same guy this year. You even cited it at the spring game. If that's really the issue, tell me a quarterback who doesn't love a running back that draws defense forward. And if Dillon doesn't see that, well, he's going to have problems reading schemes against SEC defenses if he goes to Ole Miss. I'll just throw that out there.
Well, let me pick up on what Drew says, okay, and it kind of answer your question, Kyle, because you're trying to what's the purpose? And I've covered this transfer portal from a softball aspect of my other side gigs, because softball had transfer portal before football, and baseball. And what happens here? What Drew just said about, hey, I don't think, is he a fit on Gus's system, and he's an air raid quarterback? I promise you, there are coaches, wink, wink, and people that are influential. Let's just leave it as that. I guarantee you that got to and have been telling and feeding Dillon that kind of information. Hey, I don't think that's a good fit for you. Hey, if you come out here, you can end up here. And then Matt, where you'll fit better. Trust me, he has information. He has a pretty good idea where he's going. Sure. And let's remind people, when Josh Heupel left for Tennessee, and that what happened on social media, all the players campaigned for Jeff Lebby. And you know why? Because Jeff Lebby was campaigning for the UCF job. And Dillon was right at the front, and they denied it, and they said, no, the players went on their own. Trust me. Players don't. Trust me. That thing was a roll of fire. People talk.
And that partially cost Lebby the job.
Agreed. That turned off a lot of people.
Wow.
So I think there is a lot of that going on. That's why I think a lot of people believe that Ole Miss is where he's going to end up. I believe that's where he's going to end up. And I'm going to tell you something. It's a good move and it's a bad move. It's a great move because, yes, you're going to Ole Miss. You should have more talent in theory around you. But he better be – what's ironic, if he does end up to Ole Miss, and we'll get into what other schools he might end up in. But if he does end up to Ole Miss, first of all, is Lane Kiffin still the head coach or is Lane Kiffin moving? Where is Jeff Lebby? Is Jeff Lebby going to stay at Ole Miss? Is he getting a job somewhere else? I think those are some also factors that would make that decision might help in the decision. But but here's my thing. It's ironic. Here at UCF, he basically was following a legend in Mackenzie Milton. If he goes to Ole Miss, he's basically following a legend in Matt Corral, who Ole Miss fans adore and love, who played with heart, played with an injury. He will be remembered forever, and he's going to get compared to him if he goes there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is kind of similar to when LeBron James first left Cleveland. Never won a title. No, seriously. And people were questioning what was his legacy going to be. Mm-hmm. You know, when he first went to Miami, you know, he had nothing really behind him other than, you know, he had a good run one year, but never quite got over the hump. So the question is, you know, what becomes Dillon's legacy? You know, he never won a conference title in UCF. You know, they racked up a lot of yards, but they never won the big one. They always seem to stumble. You know, he had trouble with the big road games. So Tulsa. Then where's the legacy? You know, all at this point, and one of the reasons why you know, working with Gus was actually supposed to help him is he's viewed as a system quarterback. That's a negative in the NFL.
Correct.
You don't want to be called a system quarterback, and that's what he was under Josh Heupel. So the thought was, okay, he works with, you know, Gus Malzahn. He runs a more, you know, traditional offense that can translate to the NFL. But he looks like he wants to go to an offense that focuses more on just, you know, chuck the ball deep and let the receivers run and get it. You know?
And quickly, Drew, there's a coach whose style of offense went from college to the NFL and is perceived as a failure in Chip Kelly. Now, that offense, basically the same as what Dillon was running. There is case in point and precedent for what you just said. I wanted to point that out.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, part of what you know, the transition to college to pro isn't just the scheme, it's also the personality. You know, you run a pro front office and team a lot different than you run an athletic department and a football team in college. I mean, they're very different. And
by the way, really
found that out the hard way.
The reason why we're focused so much on the NFL thing is you have to assume that the reason he's making his move is because he'll get better eyes to get in the league, right? But
that's the plan. That's what he
part
wants.
of the strategy, and I'm sure they've told him, especially if he goes to an SEC school, which we don't know. We'll get into where he.
But here's the part I want to call bunk on that, though. This isn't 20 years ago. You know, every game in every FBS program is televised. In fact, a lot of games for FCS teams, every one of them is available with ESPN Plus and other media streams. You know, it's no longer the day where you're lucky if 6 of your games get on television. No, you're unlucky if one of them isn't.
And in UCF in particular, I know it was during the pandemic, but back-to-back national televised games. That proves right there that amongst the FBS, UCF is getting a lot of attention, right?
But I don't disagree. I do think there's it, but I'm sure people are feeding that. And remember, what they can counter with, and again, this is speculation. If he ends up going to an SEC school, they probably told him, "Hey, we've produced NFL talent. No conference produces more NFL talent than the Southeastern Conference. It is like a farm system, and I bet you that's what they're counter. If he goes there, for all you know, and you brought up TCU, and we'll get into where we think he might end up. But I do want to ask some of the comments here because obviously the most dominant question Eric Edwards and others have asked. What about the quarterback room now? UCF guy 23, Eric, like 5 people are asking about the quarterback room. So as of this moment, you have Mikey Keene, who's the incumbent. You've got Parker Navarro, who's become the
change of pace.
Yeah, the change of pace guy. Took Joey Gatewood's role there.
I think Joey Gatewood should become a tight end. You got Tommy Castellanos coming in next year, and he basically reaffirmed it on Twitter, basically saying, "Hey guys, I'm coming."
There it is.
You've
got
got
the tweet. How about Thomas Castellanos? 20 minutes out, like a little bit after Dillon announced his post, he posted Night Nation upcoming. I mean, you talk about a kid who's smart. Like,
that's stones. Though.
I'm your savior.
That's called marketing right there. You basically, okay, you've got this gap here. You know, big star guy leaves. Hey, here comes the man on the white horse. You know, coming in the knight in shining armor to save the day. Now, granted, I don't think Tommy's going to start his freshman year. Unless they have to, because you want to give guys a chance to grow and develop. But I mean, it's so refreshing to see a guy who really wants to be there. I mean, you know, a lot of people say, if you don't want to be here, you know, we don't want you here. And there's some truth to that, you know. Right. Obviously, Dillon leaving is not the only player leaving. Caden Robinson put in his transfer announcement. Not a big surprise there. He kind of fell down on the depth chart. But you want people who want to be here. And, you know, for every guy like a Caden Robinson who thought he was, you know, one thing and, you know, when compared to other players turned out to be, you know, a little bit different. You want a guy like, you know, Tommy saying, you know, hey, I'm here. I'm coming. I want to be here. You know, you want those guys who are just willing to just do the dirty work and, you know, become an ambassador to your program. And I think when Dillon kind of went quiet, he stopped really being an ambassador of the program and just kind of closed in and focused on his own interior brand, almost preying on people expecting him to come back to sell some socks.
Well, I mean, it's not the first time he's put out a false narrative, right? Like last year, before McKenzie was about to transfer, he's like, well, he might play. I was in the room in the press conference when he did it. Like, it wasn't just IG hype. So he has a precedent for at least thinking he's a marketeer, right? And by the way, what a side of the times in this screenshot here, Eric, where like the whole Night Nation I'm coming thing, which by the way, the stone's on this kid, but I love it. And then the next tweet.
How smart, dude. He's like a baby face. Are you kidding me? Like fans ate that up. They were fired up when they saw that. It was smart.
We saw the heel turn. We saw that Gabriel had the heel turn and immediate. I mean, he was already a face, but man, he just like got the huge pop. I mean, you're talking almost 1,500 likes.
That's what I was getting at.
Instagram. Look at that. It's great.
The sign of the times, follow me on Instagram is the next shot. And now here we are with, you know, let's just say a follower who I see a lot around already thrown in the gifts and in the fire. And you know what? I'm with you, Eric. God bless him. The man is working the room, the virtual room. So
my God, it's Tommy. It's Tommy. I can just see JR going off on that.
He's got over 1,430 likes and counting. I mean, the kid's going to be popular. I mean, come spring ball. I mean, you could say he's not going to play, but people want to see him in the spring. And look, he's Gus's guy. And I think we have to bring this up. We got to remember a lot of these guys, like Dillon wasn't recruited by Gus. He's not a Gus guy. He was recruited by a previous staff. And you have to expect a bit of a transition. I said this before the season. It's a transitional period. I don't care. You know, you bring in a new staff, there's going to be some changes. There's going to be some guys that just don't like it how things go. Hey, I didn't come to play for that guy. It's not anything personal. Sure. It just doesn't work out for whatever reason. This happens all over the place. I don't think it's an indictment of the staff. I don't think it's an indictment of the program. I think this is just part of the way it is now in college athletics when you have constant changes.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going to go to, Eric, is that piece. I think there's an opportunity when you look at it, how many players has this program or this coach gotten drafted? Well, gosh, how many players has Gus gotten drafted over at Auburn, that little program there? You know,
just what you happen to be in the SEC. I mean, it's not like he doesn't know what he's doing.
Oh, I agree. No, listen, I agree with both of you on that. I'm just saying that's probably the you know how this works in recruiting. It's always like it's always a point of view that they're going to bring up and avoid the other side.
But they're all talking. Everybody
with that knowledge base that Gus already has, and again, as much as we love Tommy's tweet here, is it possible that the future of the quarterback room is in the room right now?
And the answer to that question is potentially no.
Exactly. Are we going to see more boom tweets from Gus throughout the offseason here? That's kind of what I expect.
Well, I think that's a great question. What are the possibilities that UCF will go after a quarterback for a transfer, especially a veteran, right? Because it's a young quarterback room right now.
Well, not only that, but Gus kind of alluded to it more than once that he's going to be looking hard and working that transfer portal. I mean, he was very successful in year one, bringing in talent. Some of the best guys that UCF had this year were transfers. Brandon Johnson, Isaiah Bowser, Big Cat Bryant, Bryson Armstrong. We're talking guys that all came from the transfer portal, had immediate impacts. And that's what you use the transfer portal for, is you want those guys to come in and not so much play a stopgap, but be an impact guy while other players, younger players, are still learning, developing, and they bring leadership, they bring on field, off field. So I would not be surprised if next year's quarterback comes from the portal. Right. He knows how to work it. He knows how to work it well. He's got a reputation. Gus is very well liked among the nation, and he's already shown results of, hey, you transfer here and you can make a difference. I mean, those players who came in all were impact players. I mean, it was fantastic at how well they grasped the system, embraced it, and excelled. And I think others are going to take note of that.
Yeah, I agree. Other comments, Mr. Hampton 9th 13, he used the hero in that tweet. He knows exactly what he's doing.
I mean, oh, come on. I mean, we're all marks on this one. He's totally reeling us in, but this is marketing. One man's trash is another man's treasure.
Hey, maybe this kid has a consultant, maybe he doesn't. Yeah, maybe this kid has a consultant, maybe he doesn't, but he's certainly doing a better job than Gabriel's people, it looks like.
Well, in fairness to Tommy, he's been gung ho about UCF for quite a while. So to see him jump on this, well, I don't find it surprising. The timing couldn't have been any better. He's doing everything right to really, really create some goodwill between him and the fan base. And as we know, the UCF fan base is an incredibly passionate fan base, double-edged sword, because now Dillon Gabriel is going to get the other end of the sword of that passion. The opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy. So love and hate, not very different from each other.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
We got a question here. Amy Bachman saying, I like to see a kicker come through that portal.
You did last year. They do have a kicker on roster. Riker Casey was a transfer from Appalachian State, but supposedly there is a commit up in the Orlando area. And I saw him on a picture on Twitter yesterday, and the name slips my mind, and I feel terrible for it because it's a kicker. But it's they do have a guy that they're trying to bring in who's pretty good. So the hope is we have some stability in our place kicking duties next year. Now, granted, Daniel Obarski is an outstanding kickoff guy. Let's leave it at kickoff guy.
Boy.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm getting comments here. Do you guys think this Dillon's decision will impact Flash and Titus, the receivers?
Flash maybe, but again, he's already a transfer, so I don't know how that physics works exactly, right? So,
as far as maybe him just declaring for the NFL, I don't know. They weren't specific on the comments.
Yeah, now if he does go to the draft, that's cool too. But with what tape? Like, I don't wish injuries on guys, but if you're a UCF fan, him getting injured and not having a whole lot of tape this year outside of a system quarterback tossing him in the ball. He may be in his best interest to come back to UCF because transferring is an issue there potentially. Again, I'm not sharp on the rules, but I believe that's going to be an issue because he's already a transfer. And listen, to be honest, I feel like 1 year of him healthy and an off season getting with whoever the quarterback is will get him back to big numbers. I think the biggest problem is he just didn't have time to find chemistry with Mikey King, because when you run routes as far and as fast as Robinson does, you got to be comfortable letting that rip like that. And true freshman quarterback, not very comfortable. You might have seen 2 examples this past Friday at the Black Friday game for the War on I-4. I'm just saying.
I actually think there's a better chance of Flash transferring than Titus. Titus kind of working his way up the system. He's getting more playing time. He's earning that. Flash is kind of falling out of the offense to a larger extent. But let's actually go further back in time. Spring game. Jalen Robinson struggled badly during the spring game. Could not create much separation in the shorter passing game. Ryan O'Keefe absolutely just dominated. And fast forward to the season, that's exactly what happened. Ryan O'Keefe had an outstanding season. Jalen Robinson, even before the injury, wasn't quite the burner that he was under the hypo system. And then when he came back, he was almost non-existent. He was the third receiver, did not generate all that much. And in fact, Titus started stealing snaps from him. So I would not be surprised if Flash would be on his way out. He just did not really fit in the system for whatever reason. I mean, he's a great player, don't get me wrong, but he struggled in it in the spring, did not really do all that great the first part before he got hurt, and was non-existent coming back from his injury.
Ken Jackson, guy I think you both are familiar with, has chimed in.
I know Ken for a long time.
He goes, quote, transfer portal and NIL has turned this into a me over we landscape. DG isn't the first, won't be the last, will look more like college basketball in the future. As a college basketball fan, I can tell you there is a lot of movement. Like I was studying the rosters. I mean, it is insane. And look, UCF's got some of their own. You saw Oklahoma there today, Kyle. They got transfers. I mean, it is. The me and we, I keep thinking of what George Leary would
It's
say.
free agency. It's free agency. It's college football free agency.
Yeah. Correct. And I think, there's a prop there's going to turn some people off. They're going to turn some people that like college football. They're going to be turned off by that. And I do think the sport's got some issues when it comes to that. Now, I can adapt. I've adapted to it, and I still follow the sport, but I don't like it like as much as I did in the 90s. I don't. It's not a good product anymore. I don't like the chemistry. There's no chemistry. It's all a bunch of sloppiness out there as a product, because I don't think guys stick together for 3 to 4 years. Guys, the quarterbacks aren't trained. Look at what happened this year. You have an inexperienced quarterback has to come in instead of a guy that's been waiting his turn 2 to 3 years. Those days are over now. The days of the guys waiting their turn are for the most part done.
That part's true, but again, I feel compelled to mention the antithesis to your point, Elo, in that there is a particular transfer that transferred once and ended up having the best statistical offense of all time in Joe Burrow. So there are positives in that. And
I think that is a positive. That's a great point. I think the positive of the portal are guys that don't get an opportunity to play. I agree with you. I think where people kind of run into an issue is, hey, our bigger school is going to take away my best player. Basically.
Well, that's the thing. You're absolutely right. Our bigger school is going to take away your best player, but a bigger school cannot give a player the proper respect. And we get Jalen Robinson performing the way he did with Dillon Gabriel alongside of Marlon Williams and doing all that. So it's funny. I mentioned Flash on purpose because he's a potential example of both, and as far as some of the other rules and having concerns with guys transferring, I think a lot of it is going to happen quickly now because it's new and it looks like an opportunity to a lot of guys, but they don't know the downside yet. And as we see more and more cases of downside where it goes wrong for players, I think when it's understood better in the future, that'll kind of balance out. Now, will we in the future want to put in rules once we see that kind of level off, or if it doesn't level off, because, hey, I could be wrong. Maybe, but to rush in and put rules in right now, I'd like to see, for example, I would watch Dillon Gabriel's example closely to see what exactly happens and how bad it could go, not just for teams, but what if this actually hurts Dillon Gabriel as an athlete somehow? I'm not saying it will. I don't want it to, but
right.
I
will say too, I think some of this will slow down once we kind of get back to normal numbers. COVID has played a role in this with the numbers game in every sport where, everybody got an extra year, you got recruiting classes, numbers. I mean, some of that's also causing some of this. I do think 5 years from now, things will slow down as people have a better understanding. But right now we're in the peak of it.
I mean, heck, both the ladies and men's basketball teams at UCF alone are returning fifth-year starters, right? The entire starting group's returning for the ladies, for example,
Well, there's an example I use in college basketball that always is my epitome of the me versus we mentality.
Hey, at least it's not LeBron again.
No, it's a college game. You go back to the 2004 NCAA tournament where the Manhattan Jaspers defeated the Florida Gators in the first round of the NCAA tournament.
I think.
It wasn't a close game. It was 75-60. But I mean, Florida was loaded with McDonald's All-Americans. And they got torched by a bunch of nobodies because the nobodies knew how to work with each other. They built the chemistry over time and were able to do something, special. And I use that as an example. I always go back to that because, we're seeing more of that now in college football. Granted, one player is not quite as impactful like you are in basketball, where one guy can just take over the entire game. You need a whole unit in football, but it's still the same mentality. You have to have guys that are willing to put on, put their job, in front of them and put their egos behind them. You're here, do your job. It's the whole New England Patriots thing. Do your job, and it works. Now to the question below, hey Trace, from Trace Tronco, our good friend and provocateur. I think Gus knew for a while because I remember we're at the press conference yesterday, and
let me just paraphrase what he
gets this shrug. He gets this shrug.
Yeah.
Let
me just say real quick what he's commenting about. The Sentinel reporting that Dillon Gabriel informed Gus today, Saturday. At what point do you think Gus knew he's seen the last of DG as a Knight? That's the question he's asking.
The Michelle article, right?
Based on the Michelle article. Go ahead.
I think it's been at least a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Because when he was asked, yes, he just kind of shrugged, and you can tell it's like, he's doing what he's going to do. Oh, he was sick. And then we're seeing all this other stuff that he's up to and all.
So I mean, I'll put it this way, and I'm not saying this necessarily to declare you wrong here. Did he know? Did he have some inkling of it last night? It's possible. But it may not have been confirmed, right?
It wouldn't have been confirmed.
Correct.
But I mean, he had it in his head. Like, I mean, Gus has been around enough. He knows the behaviors of people, of players. He's had players transfer on him before. Heck, even through our podcasts and our writings and all this stuff, I was pretty sure he was done. I mean, granted, I figured before the season this was going to be his last because he was going to the NFL. Then he got hurt. But once the SMU game happened and there was no sign of it, and then we're getting towards UConn and there's nothing, this guy's done.
And he's not even dressing.
He's not even dressing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if Mikey King gets hurt in the South Florida game? There was a moment there, I forget, where he got hit. I'm like, oh.
Yeah,
he got dropped in his shoulder hard, and he walked off the field pretty rough.
Right. What happens if he gets hurt?
Parking Navarro.
Right. But that's my whole point. I will say this, and again, I've covered the transfer portal in various sports. You could trick the media, you could trick the fans, but you can't trick a locker room. The players and the coaches know. I guarantee you, nobody was surprised. Do I believe he informed them officially today? Yes, I do think that is accurate. That doesn't mean this was a shocking development. I think they knew, and players especially, they have a sense. They hang around each other. They know when something's up. Trust me.
Let's go back to last night, and Kyle, you were in the room. Sam Jackson's talking, and he's asked about Mikey Keene, and he brightened up and said, Mikey Keene is the future. He's got a bright future here. And you can tell that was an endorsement of the guy next year. Because, obviously, Sam being a senior, I don't think he's coming back next year. He walked on senior night. I expect him to move on to the next chapter of his life, and we appreciate everything that Sam, Cole, and Marcus and any of the other seniors have done. But to give a ringing endorsement like that, especially when technically Dillon's still on the team, kind of is a very loud smoke signal. Smoke makes a lot of noise, but I mean, we heard it very loud and clear.
Well, let me expand. Let's expand on this.
This one guy.
Now, let me ask you both this. Are you both sold that Mikey Keene can do the job if he's the starter in 2022? Because I think that's going to be the question everybody's going to be asking here. Is Mikey Keene the guy long term? Do you buy what Jackson's selling there, what he said on Friday? Are you guys confident that in 2022, Mikey Keene is the starter and you can be successful if you're UCF?
Confident is obviously no, I guess, based on the way I've just cringed a bit. But I'll put it this way: you can't say impossible when the three of us all lived in a world where Mackenzie Milton was booed off the field at the Cure Bowl.
I was
and
there.
Then turned around and went undefeated. Now I wasn't at the booing.
I was at that game too,
but I was certainly there for 2017. Where it all went ridiculously correct, and if turnarounds are a thing that happen in this program. You want to get a former UCF player to frown very quickly and take their face to a dark place, just say the words 2015. If you want that to then reverse, say 2017. Okay, it's that simple. I did that a lot in conversations with these guys back when we were breakout sessions in 2018. Okay, I know that's how it works. But I'll put it this way, and I want to answer the question here really quickly because I think Drew's adding a little too much smoke to certain statements by Sam Jack. But what I will say is this: the question about Gus being informed, I don't think he was informed necessarily leading into the SMU game because of the way he told people to pump their brakes. It's one practice. I know you want to play. All this other stuff that made me kind of think that he may not have known. Yes.
Oh, I could buy that. I could buy that to some extent. I could buy that. I don't think Cossack Advisors chimed in. I think a couple weeks to demeanor changed immediately after the excitement of practicing.
Him
practicing. Well, that's what he wrote there. Our boy Cossack.
We're not going to critique on the typing. It does.
Let me chime in on the Milton thing, by the way, in 16, because it's all revisionist history and what people forget.
I was very critical on Middleton in 16.
You
agreed.
Mechanics were awful.
But you know
his mechanics were awful.
But you know who emphatically wasn't? Scott Frost, the head coach, who was asked about it. I was in the press room in the post game after Tulsa. Hey, are you considering, should you go to Justin Holman? Because there were people saying go back to Justin Holman. He was asked about this in the Cure Bowl. And Scott Frost, probably the only time he's been right about a quarterback in the last 6 years, in fairness, said emphatically, this is my guy. This is our guy. He's going to win us a lot of big games. We're sticking with him. He said he was going to win big games. I remember I've spoken to Jerry O'Neill, who's the sideline reporter. He would constantly said that. And there was a buzz about Milton even in practice, talking to players. Has that it? Did he struggle? Yeah, because he was a freshman. The question that I have about Mikey is, does he have that it factor? Or is he more of a game managing type of quarterback? I don't know the answer. I'm not saying I do, but I do want to inference with Milton. There was a buzz even from the players at practice talking about him. Just like there was a buzz about Dillon Gabriel in this freshman year when, Brandon Wimbush came in. Everybody's like, yo, you should see how this kid Gabriel throws the football. I haven't heard that from Mikey Keene. And that's my concern. That doesn't mean, though, to your point, Kyle, and I think it's the point you're making, you can make a jump from a freshman to a sophomore year. I think that's a valid, fair point in Mikey Keene's defense.
Yeah, no, and one other thing I want to quickly point out is both the quarterbacks we mentioned in Gabriel and especially in Milton, who had two professionals at one point on either end of that line protecting him, and Wyatt Miller and Aaron Evans. Shouts to the painter over my head here. The key that a lot of people are leaving out is those tackles. And listen, no offense to Sam J or anybody else on the offensive line, okay, but like that the offensive line of 2017 is far superior to what we have here. The offensive line of 2018, I could even argue, is more superior to what we have
Well,
here.
there's going to be questions about this offensive line moving forward, right? That's one of the big
Certainly.
other questions in the offseason. How many of these guys are coming back? How many upgrades? I think that's an area where either the recruiting class or the transfer portal, I think you're going to see some moves in that line. Cossack, by the way, clarified. He's driving. So understandable.
Hey, respect. Listen, I've done it too. It's all good, bud.
He says when Gus announced DG practicing, both he and the players were excited. The next week, they were less excited about DG's progress.
And that's exactly what my point was, right? The following Monday, when the practicing came up, oh, DG's sick. What had happened was, right? Yeah, exactly. I think the point that you made, Drew, is did Gus have some idea last night at the War on I-4 press conference? Absolutely, he did.
He kind of shrugged it off. He's like kind of like that. Well, kind of shrug.
He was sick, and frankly, I believe it was the Orlando Sentinel's Justin Beatty who asked the question on Monday. He did kind of the same thing. Well, he's sick. It's going to be kind of tough to get him in the game. So I would, and again, this is all speculation. And I know that there are those in the comments who dislike speculation and all that, but this particular speculation on my part is that it would have been after SMU that Gus had a clue that it was coming.
Yeah, well, once the SMU game happened, because obviously,
and Dillon didn't.
you interview Monday, before the game. Obviously, a lot changes from Monday to Saturday. Then the game happens or doesn't happen. That was the time. Once he realized he's not playing that game, that's it. That's I think where he realized I don't think this is happening.
Right, especially in a season where a lot of guys are banged up. A lot of guys. And you guys have played the game. When you see your teammate banged up, there's I wouldn't say an obligation, but there's like, hey man, I gotta support this guy who's putting it on the line myself.
I got to shout out Matt Lee on that. He's been beat up, and coach, even said, we pulled him out last week. The team pulled him out before. He stuck it out this game. They wouldn't let him. They weren't going to pull him this time. But I mean, he would if the team didn't pull him out, he would have fought the entire game. But I mean, there are times he's hobbling off the field. It's sad to watch. From the fact of you don't want to see guys get hurt, but man, you gotta love the strength of character to not quit. And that's the one thing. And people are like, oh, players are quitting now. The season's over. The regular season's over. They're moving on. No one's the only guys who quit were the ones who left in the middle of the year. Those guys quit. But the majority of this team, they're not quitters, like Coach Malzahn said. They fought their tail off. If they were quitting, they would have gone the way of the 2004s, the 2015s. The adversity hit.
The season could have spun out of control,
and it would have it would have been like 2003, where they started 2-1. Bunch of players get suspended for stuff for the year, and they end up 3-9. The wheels just fall off. Wheels didn't fall off. They tightened them up. They started 3-3. They finished 5-1. There's no quit there. If there's quitting, it's a very minor part.
How is it the coach puts it exactly? They didn't flinch. That's been, they didn't flinch because of this whole situation where the IR is so crazy that even the coach is on the damn thing. Okay.
Nobody is safe.
No doubt. They didn't flinch is Gus's version of Heupel's we're going to go 1-0. Okay. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And but it's way more likable.
I mean, Gus did get hurt. I mean, it was a tough season from an injury standpoint on that. So what, another questions people coming in. What you mentioned Dillon's legacy. What are you going to remember about Dillon? That's going to be kind of weird to kind of remember. He was a talented quarterback. I think he's a top 5 talented quarterback in the history of this program, but there's going to be that but, right? Like
he's the guy who followed the guy.
Yeah.
He's Ron Zuck.
I think it's actually a little bit more grand and depressing at that all at the same time. He blew up all of Milton's records for, a young quarterback coming in, starting as early as he did, right? And he would have been on pace to beat McKenzie's records had he stayed healthy, had he come back another year. I mean, and let's not leave out, you're going to transfer to TCU potentially where you could utilize your eligibility to play in the Big 12 eventually anyway in a system you're going to start. Whatever. But I think for me personally, his legacy is going to be a missed opportunity here.
So what if his last snap as a Knight was that kooky last play where he got hurt at Louisville?
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, you want to talk about what if? What if that pass doesn't get tipped and intercepted back to the house? What if that pass is actually properly
that's completed? A good what if.
Okay. Right. And then they actually get in place to set up to kick the field goal. Oh, never mind. Obarski would miss it. I'm kidding. No. And then they hit the field goal and the day is won. That tip has now changed the complete trajectory of potentially of certain things going on. Well, definitely. Yeah, I don't know it's going to be a worse or a better trajectory, honestly, but there's a different trajectory now because of that single moment.
But the end result would have been the same if he didn't.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, he would have been if he played this year and didn't get hurt. He was gone. Instead he was going to the NFL draft. This was,
but that would have been a much more positive ending.
It would have been a positive ending, but the end result of him leaving after this year would have been the same. It would not have changed. It just where he was going and the attitude behind it would have changed. The narrative would have changed. The result would have been the same because this 2022 class is pretty thin. You've got Corral, you've got Sam Howell, you got Desmond Ridder, Malik Willis, and a bag of Skittles. This is not a strong quarterback class at all. And that was why a lot of people expected Dillon Gabriel to have a good year to shake off that system quarterback label and propel himself into serious questions of being a higher round draft pick. And I saw at the highest him having like a 4th round grade after last
there's
season.
No way. Who puts him?
Look it up, sir. Look it up.
I can look it up all day. It's a bad analysis. That's asinine.
Remember, perception versus reality. System quarterbacks are not viewed well in the NFL.
But and he still gets.
That's what this year was all about. Was about him shedding that and proving that he's not a system quarterback. He didn't get the opportunity, so now he's looking for another opportunity where he may end up in a similar system, but utilize the team reputation to get past that.
I'll suffice it to say this: I'm looking forward to being impressed.
Well,
be impressed.
This reminds me a little bit about the Graham brothers, and this might be for old school UCF fans.
Oh, man, the twins that shall not be named.
Yes, Joey and Stephen Graham, talented basketball players, 2 of the most talented players ever to play basketball at UCF, transferred to Oklahoma State, had a good run at Oklahoma State. Joey ended up playing in the NBA, but Drew's reaction just said it all. Knight fans don't have positive things to say. In fact, it was funny. I think it might have been earlier this year in the calendar year. It was when Taco Fall and the Celtics, I think, made the playoffs, or he played in the playoffs. And Jeff threw out the name Joey Graham, and people like, whoa, no. He ain't ours, brother. We don't count him. Screw that. Like, people took backlash at him.
Interesting.
They don't.
Part of that was it was the comments his dad made.
Yes.
Now, in the case, obviously, Dillon's dad, Garrett, didn't say anything really bad, but the Graham brothers' dad basically said, "Yeah, we want to go somewhere where their work actually matters." I mean, he basically trashed the school because they were a fledgling, program in the Atlantic Sun.
Right.
That luckily. Dillon's dad didn't do that. he did not.
No, but it reminded me. I think it reminds me of that because the Grahams were successful at Oklahoma State, and Joey obviously played in the NBA. I think Dillon can be successful wherever he ends up. He's talented. He's very talented. Let's not. And I think he could be. You don't think he could be successful at TCU?
At TCU, sure. The NFL is another question.
No. I'm not talking NFL. I'm not talking NFL. That's a whole different category. I'm not going to get into. I'm talking his next landing spot because I don't think UCF fans are worried about the NFL stuff. They're more worried about where is he going now.
Sure. If he
And
goes
I
to the SEC, I have questions about him facing SEC defenses week in and week out. Yes.
Well, and I'm witnessing that as we talk. Let's all right. So let me throw out some schools. You tell me yay or thumbs up, thumbs down as far as a Dillon possible landing spot, good fit. The obvious one that's going to be the heavy favorite is Ole Miss.
Absolutely. Ole Miss is definitely the heads-on favorite. They got Jeff Levy. They got an offense that is catered to him perfectly because that's what he did his freshman year, was work under Jeff Levy. So, I mean, it makes perfect sense for Ole Miss. They have a quarterback spot that's opening up because Matt Corral is going to go to the NFL draft. I don't see anywhere else that comes close as far as that number one option, but things happen. There could be other schools that vie for it.
And I'll ask this, and I'll add this too, even though I've made my position about how I think Dillon will do against SEC defenses. One thing he will have protecting him is an SEC offensive line. And that is a big dang deal, people. Okay. The example I'll give, it won't be LeBron James, sorry, but it will be Lamar Jackson playing in a bowl game, the Citrus Bowl specifically, against LSU.
I was there.
Yeah, I didn't even know I didn't even know I knew you yet, right, Elo? But yeah, literally my first credentialed college football game that I covered, and L-Jack got crushed, and it dawned on me later when a couple years later when he got drafted by the Ravens, the reason why he's going to be more successful in the NFL is that chances are the LSU defensive line against his O-line at Louisville, that disparity of talent may be bigger than what he faces in, week out. Meaning, sure, he's got a better offensive line now in Baltimore. And sure, the defensive lines he's facing in the NFL are better. But the difference in talent, not so great as that year's LSU defensive line, who had a number of pros on it, right? And then also Devon Godchaux among them. The name comes to mind because I covered him with the Dolphins Wire. And then certainly Marshall. You went from having Louisville's offensive line to taking snaps with Marshall Yanda at guard in front of you. What more do I have to tell you? So from that standpoint, the disparity of talent for the O-line versus the D-line may equalize more. He may have more time. He may get an opportunity to prove that he's more mobile than people think. That's a possibility. And the receiver core may be there. It's a possibility.
All right. It all depends on the attrition that Ole Miss suffers themselves.
Sure.
No team is immune to the transfer portal and graduation and all these other forms of attrition. I mean, every school is going to fall victim to a certain extent.
All right. Tennessee. Does he reunite with Josh Heupel? Didn't end on the best of terms, supposedly. No chance.
I'm giving a thumbs down on that one. Okay. I don't see it. That did not end well. No.
How about any of the Florida schools? Florida State. Any chance there?
I mean,
go ahead, Kyle.
It could happen with FSU allegedly if Milton gets in his ear, I guess. But it's not like Mackenzie's having a positive experience per se, at FSU, right? And if we're talking about, protection as far as a fit, because when I think great offensive lines, I think FSU. No, I don't. So, I would have to say a humble no as well to any other schools in the state.
Okay. I don't think any school in the state's going to work out. Florida State's got a quarterback. Florida has a quarterback. They just didn't know it until the very end.
You better hope they better hope he stays. Anthony Richardson. They better hope he stays.
Well, they make him the starter. He'll stick around. But I mean, with the head coaching in turmoil, I think all signs point to a guy like a Billy Napier being hired to Florida. That's not really the system for Dillon Gabriel. Miami's an absolute mess. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole.
Right.
I don't see any state program really having something that'll work for him.
Any other schools you want to throw out there? You've thrown out TCU. Anybody else? I mean, I get in the radar here, a West Coast school, and could he come closer to home? Maybe a Pac-12 school?
Well, I want to throw a dark horse in there, and no one's going to, well, maybe you would think of it, but I'm going to go with SMU as an option.
Whoa, SMU.
as a very dark horse, and I mean the darkest of dark horses.
Literally, them being the Mustangs, it's a dark horse.
Well, you have Tanner Mordecai there, but with a coaching change, Sonny Dykes gone. There's a possibility he could walk away too, even though he's transferred once before. And you got Rhett Lashley, which I think would be a great guy to work with Dillon Gabriel. That's my way outside the box. You know,
they've got
if you have an extra $5 to throw away, you put the bet on that one. But I mean that's one that, you know, could it happen? Maybe, you know, if you want to win the Powerball kind of happen.
Hey, listen, if we're putting on tinfoil hats, why doesn't he just transfer to Notre Dame, get a guaranteed coach, and then be somewhere with notoriety will be absolutely nuts, and everybody will lose their mind because it's a reverse Wimbush. Why not just go all in?
I don't want Notre Dame to be that good.
By the way, SMU, I don't agree on SMU. They've got Stone, the freshman kid they like a lot over there. We'll see if Rhett Lashley likes. And by the way, SMU is scheduled to play UCF next year. No, I don't think we can handle that. I agree with Fallen Hero. I'm going to throw a dark horse. Nebraska. They need a quarterback. They need a quarterback coach too. A Milton Gabriel package to Nebraska.
I don't see Milton being hired as a quarterback coach right off the bat. I see him as a GA for at least a year.
That's my way out of left field one. All right.
No,
it's fair. We're all looking for stuff that's way out of left field. That's kind of like the, you know, let's go Skip Bayless on this and throw something that just makes so little sense that it's fun to talk about.
Skip.
He gets paid $1 million. Fallen Hero, the base legend, asked Drew. This is our territory here. Bowl options. Where do we stand? Where do we stand?
From what I've heard, the military's already is out.
Yeah,
East Carolina's going there.
Accepted, right?
Yeah, and which made perfect sense. We got that one. I think it's at this point now. It's really. I think it's going to be Birmingham. You know, as intriguing as Florida UCF is in the Gasparilla, if they can get Miami in there, they would do that in a heartbeat over UCF easily. That will sell,
especially since you might have two interim head coaches battling it out in that bowl game.
I mean, the suspense and the intrigue just kind of sell itself. But I think Florida is almost a lock for Gasparilla at this point. They won. They got 6-6. They're going to be the bottom of the barrel of the SEC bowl list. Keep them in state, and that really gives the Gasparilla a lot of freedom to choose a different opponent. They can go out of state and still get good turnout with the Gators there. Obviously, you're not going to get a full house as for a 6-6 Florida team, but you're going to get a decent turnout. You could probably get at least 35,000, which for that bowl game would be breaking records. I still think it's Birmingham, and it's going to be against a 6-6 SEC team. I really thought it was going to be Auburn. I think Auburn may be playing their way out of it.
How great would that be, though?
Oh, it would have been absolutely. It would have been absolutely awesome.
Beat the team with the beach bowling.
I know it would have been absolutely perfect, but it does not look so. Don't shaking the magic 8-ball, and it says check back later. It's kind of mocking us a little bit. But,
all right. Since we're live, we're going to record. Alabama just scored to tie it up in the final seconds here. So the dream is still alive.
The dream lives. Full discourse. My sister did go to the University of Alabama, even though. So when it comes to Alabama versus Auburn, I will always put Alabama first. Auburn is the bad guy, I'll always put Alabama first on that matchup. But from this standpoint, Auburn losing is good because I think it adds to the intrigue of, hey, Gus Malzahn playing his old team. That's a sellable story. And that's part of what these smaller bowls need. They need a hook. The Gators playing in state, that's a hook against Miami that you can use that. Auburn versus UCF, rematch of the Peach Bowl, Gus Malzahn on the other side of the sideline.
with
There's
a
a
fan
hook
base
there.
that already travels great because they went across the damn country for the Fiesta on more than one occasion.
And it's not that far. I mean,
Correct.
granted, there's plenty of us who will struggle to make that drive for one reason or another, 3.5-year-old.
Fool, I got 2 kids. I don't want to hear that trash. Anyways.
Well, that means you're luckier than I am.
Somebody Fallen here was asking, what about Fenway?
Fenway is still an option. I don't think UCF's going to end up in Fenway, and this is why. When the Fenway Bowl was first brought out, it was marketed very heavily by the American to be one of their top bowls. The Birmingham was always where they send the runner-up. I think the runner-up is going to end up in Fenway now against the ACC in that Northeast corridor. You've got pro ballpark. It's later in the year. I think that's where they're going to be pushing a team. That's why I have Houston going there, right? Because Houston's projected to be the runner-up, and as a result, Birmingham gets knocked down a little bit. So I don't think UCF is going to end up getting that type of destination. I think that's propping them up too much. They're in a log jam for third place in the conference. So they're gonna East Carolina going regional. I think UCF's going to go regional, and then you have SMU will probably end up regional, and then Houston, who ends up getting the nod to the Fenway, would be my projection.
And well, gosh, and the way to break all that is if Houston pulls the upset. Not saying they will, but
Well, that's significant. I mean, that is a significant game. I mean, Cincinnati. That's why this Alabama-Auburn game that we're watching is significant, because if Alabama were to lose this game, that just makes Cincinnati's path much more clear. Some would say it's already clear as it is. So,
well, according to Kirk Herbstreit, it's clear. You win and you're in. But I mean,
right.
If Alabama loses, obviously that changes things. Michigan's going to jump up, obviously, with the win over Ohio State. They may end up, number 2 if Alabama loses. If Alabama wins, they'll probably end up number 3. I think they're going to jump over Cincinnati with the win over Ohio State.
I think Michigan jumps Alabama regardless if Alabama wins.
Possibly.
You beat Ohio State, was ranked number 2?
Yeah, I'm with Elo on that.
Who does number 2 work for?
Against a 6-5 team. What? With a backup quarterback.
I'll put it this way. All of that could be blown up if what you're talking about happens, Elo, with Bama potentially losing today. If that happens, and then they somehow win the conference championship, 2 SEC teams will in fact participate. That is a fact.
We'll see.
We'll see. If Georgia loses and Alabama wins, definitely two SEC teams in the playoffs.
With 2 losses, though. Well, wait, Kyle's saying, though, even if they have 2 losses.
They're the SEC conference champ. They're going to let the SEC conference champ in, period.
I mean, you're gonna have to have a hard debate that but you have to assume Michigan wins. You have to assume Oklahoma State wins.
I've seen the makeup of the committee. There's too many active ADs for it to go any other way.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some. Obviously, the winner of Bedlam is you're going to have to put all your chips behind. But one of those teams is going to have to win. You got Notre Dame. I mean, you have 1-loss teams. You're going to be really hard pressed on the political standpoint to justify a 2-loss team. But remember, 2017, Alabama got in, didn't even win their own division.
Correct.
I want to switch back to the American real quick, because I don't think it matters now who wins next week, because UTSA lost.
You're talking about the whole big picture as far as
the whole big picture.
Okay.
I don't think from the American bowl standpoint, I don't think it matters now.
Houston. So you're saying it locks Houston basically in the
it locks one of them. Obviously, winner take all at this point. I think Houston's locked for the New Year's 6th if they win over Cincinnati. They'll get the bump in the CFP rankings. They're already in the top 25. The only team ahead of them was UTSA. They lost. BYU does not have an automatic into the New Year's 6. So granted, they're 13th. That doesn't mean anything. They can still end up being passed up. The big question at this point now becomes what happens with the Mountain West with San Diego State. They're playing Utah State. However, I'll put money on that one. that Houston beat Cincinnati,
They should
they'll jump over
They should.
because of that resume booster.
That's
I
a
don't
great
think
point.
there's anything San Diego State could do to stay ahead at that point. They're too close. They're 24 and 21.
It's a great point.
Say what you will about Cincy. They beat the team that beat Notre Dame handily at the very least.
Oh yeah, I'm just playing the other side because
No.
That's very legitimate. Yeah, very legitimate.
Both Eric and I have Cincinnati as of last week. We haven't done our this week bowl predictions because obviously the games aren't done yet, but we have both Cincinnati in the CFP semifinals at this point. So we're assuming they're going to win all the way through.
I respect your faith in the committee. I'll leave it at that.
Well, it's more the fact of there's just so many pieces working against the committee.
But here's the thing, and
Cincinnati getting it,
and we'll get into more about this on the actual podcast and probably the next couple of weeks. But the difference between a Cincinnati and a UCF in 2017, and I've said this, I've been consistent about this for 5 years. What the committee wants is for a team like Cincinnati to beat a Power 5 team at the Power 5's place. And Cincinnati did that with Notre Dame.
A top 10 team at that.
That's the difference. UCF didn't have that on the resume.
Top 10 team that struggled with juggernauts like Toledo and Purdue. Woo!
It's a top 10 team, man.
Hey, but in the end, they're still going to go with it. I agree with you, Kyle. I know your feelings on that are long and storied with the BCS.
The BSC,
rightfully so. I'm not saying you're wrong.
It's college football politics, and unfortunately, this is the only sport where you can go undefeated and it doesn't matter. Fortunately, it's still the case. If UTSA won out, it wouldn't have mattered.
That's not going to change either, even if you expand the playoff. If you're a G5 team, by the way. In fact, I think there's this idea that hey, you go to 12, that solves everything. No, I don't agree. I agree. See, Kyle and I agree on that. I don't think a second G5 team makes it at all.
No, in fact, they're not. If Cincinnati makes the CFP, semifinals, they're not obligated to bring another team.
Correct. And I agree.
The whole New Year's Six is those 6 games, and the CFP semifinals are part of the New Year's Six. So congratulations, that satisfies the G5 requirement.
Exactly. And by the way, starting in July of 2023, if you're a UCF fan, that's exactly how you want it. That's exactly how you
obviously. Want it. Now, granted, put an asterisk, not officially July 2023, but all signs point to it that.
Wink, wink. All right, let's do Kyle a favor before we wrap up. The man has been working his blank off. He was at the football game Friday. He covered UCF, Oklahoma. Big game in men's basketball. We apologize in advance to men's basketball. This should get more coverage, but it didn't because the quarterback decided to write on Instagram that he's leaving. So,
what a jerk.
Kyle, that's where we're at. Kyle, you were at the basketball game.
I was.
First, I think your headline was sooner, Big 12. Here we go, Oklahoma. UCF loses a tough game, really good game against Oklahoma. Kind of give us an idea for those that may have missed it, the breakdown.
Man, I'll tell you what, the way that game went down is it was a series of series. A lot of runs taking place and runs were exchanged. You got to love, first of all, we heard at Hoops Media Day back when, a month ago or whatever it was, that this game, Auburn coming up, Michigan later on the schedule, was all to test what life would look like in the Big 12, if the wink 2023 is a thing, and all that, and how the program would cope. And I'll tell you, if this was that test, if this was the first section of the test, as it were, UCF certainly passed with this one with flying colors. There was a lot of physical play on both sides, and you could tell what UCF exposed was that Oklahoma wouldn't be quite as athletically inclined as you believe. They just started beating them up in the paint, and that's how they got a majority of their points. Coach Dawkins himself said in the postgame that he used the words, they imposed their will, and most of the points being in the paint for Oklahoma would dictate that. But at the very same token, UCF's 20 turnovers, the argument can be made that they beat themselves. Oklahoma's 20 turnovers that they also committed, right? That actually shows defensively that they were right in the thick of it. Despite the fact that they were getting smashed in the paint defensively, by Oklahoma when Oklahoma's on offense. Shikenbake Jong, CJ Walker, those cats are doing their job badly. Really, the only question at that point becomes, because Bake is a fifth-year senior, because Walker is getting up there in years himself, that's a situation where you got to have the next class of big men coming in. But based on today's performance, it's one step back for this record now being 4-1. It's a huge step for UCF kind, so to speak, as they approach.
I was waiting to see if you were going to go with the Neil Armstrong quote. You started it. It's like, okay.
It's called talent. Get with it.
Yeah.
What?
Darren Green, 17 points. Darius Perry, 16 points, leading the way.
And much more. 8 assists, too. Accounted for a lot of points on the board beyond his own 16.
Up next for
that's
UCF.
what the field general is supposed to do, though.
Up next, by the way, UCF goes to Auburn. See, Drew, you get your UCF Auburn game after all.
Yay!
Basketball. In basketball. All right. We've said enough. We've yelled enough. We've argued enough. We've hopefully came up with some comments, some content that make you think a little bit, boys. Final thoughts before we wrap it up and watch the remainder of football here. Drew, I'm going to start with you. Final thoughts.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with Kyle, age before beauty, but okay.
Wow.
I have both, so what's your problem?
I got to grasp at straws here. Give me something. Alms for the poor.
Anyways.
Obviously a very disappointing day for fans. I can't say I'm very surprised. Just the signs were popping up over the last couple weeks. But let's be honest. The reality of all this is nothing. Nothing has changed. Dillon has not played since the end of the Louisville game. This has been Mikey Keene's team. Nothing's changed from that. It just means that he's just not coming back. So as I said before, in prior podcasts, until he's back behind the center, taking the snap, he's not back. Well, this is no different. He's not back. Life moves on. Things go forward. This is the same team that played against USF. This is the same team the week prior, and this will be the same team next week. Nothing's changed. The reality is nothing has changed. There's no reason to hit the panic button. There was already plans in place on building towards the future. Heck, if everything worked out perfectly, we expected Dillon to go to the NFL draft in 2022. So again, this was not a big surprise that Gabriel is going to be in a different school in 2022. It's disappointing that it ended the way it did, how it did. But you know what? You wear the jersey for the front. You don't wear it for the back.
Kyle?
So I'll see Drew's don't get too negative and raise it this. Say what you will about what Gabriel's impact may or may not have been in the coming season or any of that. Here's what I do know. You had a first-year coach who took a team with an IR longer than Santa's wish list from any of my children, and then managed to produce an 8 potential 9-win season out of it in a year where they were actually somehow, with all those injuries, the first bowl eligible team in the damn state, competing with a lot of other Power 5 schools to achieve that, by the way, over and above the fact that with all these injuries, with the way Gus recruited in his first year, in this offseason, to get major producers for the team, like you talked about, I don't have any reason that there should be any sort of pessimism if you're a UCF fan, which, hey, listen, I've said before, I'm more objective than Elo, wink, wink. But yeah, let's not start panicking. Let's not start panicking if you're a UCF fan, for goodness sake. I mean, the fire Heupel stuff was one thing. Stay on the Gus bus. He's giving you plenty of reasons to do so. Ironically, by using crutches, he made the bus more interesting a ride. But I digress.
Well, let me just throw that on top of that real quick, Kyle. Just based on comments, I don't think anyone's jumping off the Gus bus. I think this actually may help galvanize the Gus bus and get people more on it, because it just shows what he's had to work with and what he's done. I think this actually improved the support of Malzahn and his coaching staff.
Galvanize is a good word. That's possible. I won't rule that out.
I'll just leave it as this. Nighthawk 811 chimes it up. You guys have an awesome channel. Keep up the good work. I agree. That's what I'm excited about.
Good job. Good effort.
To our YouTube page. I apologize. There's some noise. There's people throwing parties outside the house. It's not actually my TV. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
I don't think so. I don't know. It's Saturday. It's a Saturday night. I don't know. In Orlando.
Maybe they're Gator fans.
I doubt it, but who never know. I don't know. That Kyle Nash making his night shift debut, by the way. If only you could be more, not as shy about your comments.
Well, hey, I am reserved.
He's so modest.
That's
I know, right? So for Kyle, where can the people tell the audience where they can find you? Kyle, starting with you.
Of course, you can find me on Twitter at the SOTG, doing my work for the Black and Gold Banneret during this upcoming continuing basketball season for both men's and women's, and for any of the bowl action up here. You may see a little bit more of me depending on how that works with placement and all of that. Find me on Instagram as the same as well, the SOTG.
You can catch me on Twitter if you haven't blocked me at standpoint. Obviously, we're going to be still covering football. The season's not over. We still have a bowl game to worry about. So leading up to that and then into the off season, but I will be also doing a variety here and there once that football is over and we turn towards our other Olympic sports because they need love too.
Indeed. And I want the record to make sure Jeff heard me say banneret this time.
He finally got it right because he didn't get it right when I was talking to him after the game last night.
I got it right the first time on the podcast, and then I got it wrong the second. It's weird. Anyways.
Very good. Volleyball, we'll find out their fate as far as where they're going for the NCAA tournament Sunday night, 8:30. Bryson will be on top of that. I'll be on top of that. I had this great article about projecting where they're going to go, but because of Dillon's announcement, it's all out the window. So I'm just
what a jerk.
I'm just going to say the UCF's probably going to Miami for the NCAA tournament in volleyball. They're probably going to play Florida first round. That's a problem. Anyway. Eric Lopez, Hilo, you can follow us there. Make sure you follow us, blackandgoldbanneret.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page. We'll have more night shifts. We'll probably have another night shift once we know where UCF is going bowling. We'll have our regular podcast this week. I get to be in charge of the podcast, so that's going to be chaos. Look out, because Jeff's got surgery coming up.
Yes, everyone keep Jeff sharing in your thoughts. He's going to be going under the knife, getting his back fixed.
Don't send him a virtual hug. That's painful.
Yes, no hugs. He can't handle that right now. He's very sensitive. Yes. Hurts his feelings a lot. And he plans on being back for UCF Michigan at probably Edition Financial Arena.
Sooner for the podcast, probably, but you never know. Hopefully everything goes very well with her. And thanks to everybody who's tuned in, asked questions, comments. I know we didn't get to every comment and questions, but I think we kind of hit up all the major points. Obviously, we'll follow this story as it develops. It's going to be a wild offseason, as it always is in college football, and we appreciate you tuning in to Black and Gold Banneret. We'll keep you covered on every UCF sport and all the latest on that. So for Kyle, for Drew, I'm Eric. Enjoy your rest of your football weekend. And please, no more Instagram announcements for the weekend. Yeah, everybody else. All right, just let us watch our football. This has been Night Shift on the Black and Gold Banneret.